Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and this is Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and this is an interesting one, and probably one of the most unique of these episodes so far that I've done for Welcome to the Wasteland, because this is my first documentary, and this is not a narrative. I attempted to do some other Scorsese documentaries, but, just couldn't find them. And this one is on the Criterion channel. We're going to be talking about Italian-American, and I'm looking forward to this as an Italian-American from New Jersey. This is something that I was looking forward to and, gaining some perspective on what Scorsese brings to the table, talking to his parents, Catherine and Charles Scorsese. But we're going to get there. This show has 3 segments. We have our coming attractions, so for coming attractions for the week of October 8th. Then we have our feature film, which is Italian-American, and then I have some recommendations. So let's get started with coming attractions, and I really wanted to pick Lamb, the new A24 horror film, because, crazy, but I couldn't. It had to be No Time to Die. I've been a Bond fan since I was 8 years old, watching James Bond nonstop every November for Bond month, my birthday month. It was a special time for me. And, as an 8-year-old watching these very misogynistic and violent movies, it's interesting watching how Bond has evolved over time, and the Craig Bond era and even parts of the Brosnan era really started taking a look at that character. And it's interesting growing up and how my perception of these movies have changed, but I'm so excited for No Time to Die. All 2 hours and 43 minutes of it. Cary Fukunaga is a fantastic, talented artist, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with this film. I've heard some strong reviews and thoughts on the film so far. Rami Malek as a Bond villain is an interesting perspective. I just hope that this isn't overly bloated and crazy like Spectre was. But, the 2 hours and 43 minutes, it's going to be bloated, right? There's going to be a lot going on, but hopefully it works effectively. But seeing Daniel Craig era Bond end after, because I was 15 when he took over and did Casino Royale, and now I'm 30. I'm going to be 30 next month, and it's literally half my life Daniel Craig has been James Bond, and it's interesting seeing that end. So, No Time to Die 100% is my most anticipated film coming out on October 8th. So, I can't wait. I'll probably be seeing on the 9th, that Saturday. But those are coming attractions. Shifting gears into our feature film, and this is Italian-American. And this is a 49-minute documentary where Martin Scorsese just sits down with his parents, Charles and Catherine Scorsese, and you get a whole perspective on their lives as Italian-Americans, and some of the things that really stuck out to me, which I thought was really interesting, because you're sitting here watching this film, and I grew up in a household with my grandparents, and my grandfather was a first-generation American. Both of his parents were Italian immigrants, and this perspective of my grandfather's name was Venezio or something like that. They're his name is Vincent. My great-grandmother's I don't like Vincent. I like James. That kind of stuff just happened. It was so interesting because I knew my grandfather as James Delali my whole entire life. It's not his real actual name. Wasn't his real actual name. And turned out that we were celebrating his birthday on the wrong day too for his whole entire life. So it's so interesting, that perspective of Italian Americans coming over, because Martin Scorsese's mother makes a comment about they call her Katie. Where's that from? And her name's Catherine, and apparently Charles Scorsese's real name's Luciano. So I think that's obviously a thing where it's a lot of immigrants come over and it's just people can't pronounce their names and they just Americanize it. And you get that perspective in this because this film was, the documentary's from the 70s. So this is a good 50 years ago at this point almost. as a perspective, and like Scorsese's still young and he has his parents here and they're middle-aged, and obviously this is before like 20 years before 15 16 years before Catherine Scorsese makes her big appearance in Goodfellas as Joe Pesci's mom. But you have this documentary, and it's really interesting just sitting there and listening this married couple bicker back and forth like a married couple. They're fun. They have a lot of personality, both of them. You could see where Martin Scorsese gets a lot of personality. He comes by it honestly from both of his parents, and sitting there and like, oh my god, looking at their living room and like the plastic covered couch and everything just brought back so many memories of like going to see like my Aunt Mill or my great Uncle Joe, and you know, Italian-Americans for some reason like to plastic up their couches, and or just like maybe it was just a thing of that time specifically, but you know, most of my experiences with older generations growing up were my Italian-American relatives, because my grandmother was English, Irish, and Scottish, but I didn't really know her family. So like my whole entire family is just like really Italian. And you have all these traditions of like the 7 fishes before Christmas, and every Easter we went to South Philly into a row home to my cousin Carmen's house where we had frittata. Delicious. Missed it the past 2 years. But like figuring out how many people you could cram into a South Philly row home on Easter. Just everybody taking turns at the table, eating a whole bunch of food. And I really appreciated watching this documentary, and because it's like, I felt like I knew these people, kind of thing. And you have that feeling of understanding and representation, and I think that's and that's become such a big thing for me thinking about a lot lately, is representation in media, because it's like it does matter a lot. And because like you think about like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola were two of the big Italian-American artists who had a voice and were creating stories. And I've watched a couple of Scorsese's films so far, and it's so deeply Roman Catholic, and just having that perspective on it, like sitting at home in a very Roman Catholic household with Italian and Irish grandparents, and you know, you have Pope John Paul II picture just hanging up there in the dining room, and he's just watching you eat every night and kind of thing. And like when I went away to college, my grandmother gave me because she was the person in my family that was very religious, and she made sure that I had my communion rosary that I had since I was like in elementary school, and she told me to make sure to keep it like on me at all times, and like I did. Like I didn't really go to church anymore. I'm confirmed Roman Catholic, but like I'm more of probably agnostic at this point, where it's just like, you know, wouldn't be surprised. A lot of things could happen. A lot of things could be true. But I don't know. But I still carried the rosary with me the whole entire time I was in college. It was always in my pocket until it broke. Because, you know, keeping rosary in your pocket with your keys in it, eventually probably something bad's going to happen. And that's what happened. But it's so interesting listening to these two people, Catherine and Charles Scorsese, interact with each other, because you feel the love there. You feel the bickering, you banter back and forth. It's like right from the start where she's like, you see, he always sits down. And he always sits all the way from me. Like, come over here. And just like, and he's just like, no, come over here. It's like, no, you come over here. And it's just the two of them interacting on the couch is fun. And then you see them, they move over to the table, and they just have a table full of food, because Italian people. And them talking about all the connections that they had. It was like, you know, my cousin did this, and like I was able to get a job doing that because of that. And it really is a sense of community. And, you know, that representation is so important in media, because it's like we all need to see ourselves in some shape or form. And like Martin Scorsese like his earlier films, very Roman Catholic, like I mentioned. But like most people know him for gangster films, and it's like most like if you think about what are the most popular Italian American representations in cinema and television, it's The Godfather, Goodfellas, and The Sopranos. And not gonna lie, I'm very excited for Many Saints in Newark. We'll be watching it tonight as I record this, but like it just makes it seem like all Italian Americans are in the mob, which is not true. And it's such an interesting thing, and just being able to see just like such a simple idea of a documentary and getting that perspective on like an immigrant story and that the struggles of assimilation, the struggles of finding your place and finding your work and making something for yourself. And I feel like that immigrant story has been lost today because it's such a hot button thing in our country that it's like we should hate immigrants coming here. They're bad people. And that's a shame because we're all immigrants. None of us started here. And it's something where it's like, I feel like there's two ways that you could have that perspective on things. It's like, well, I dealt with these things, you should just get over it too. Or it's, I dealt with these things, I can empathize with what you're struggling with. And I'm much more of that. And seeing this film really speaking to me and just enjoying this experience of listening to two people who have lived lives and also getting some perspective on the background that Scorsese comes from, because we all bring our background into our work, and you can see like why this like Italian experience is so important in a lot of his films. And it's so interesting because like after this, it doesn't, like, at least my next two films definitely aren't that Italian experience. One of them, which is Taxi Driver. But you have this experience here, and seeing this film, and being able to just sit and listen to a couple of people talk about their lives. And it's simple, it's enjoyable, it's funny, because, you know, they have a lot of personality, and they bounce off of each other really well. But I think this is a fun little experience, and I'm glad that I got to check it out on the Criterion channel. So, made me think a lot, and reminisce, and really think about perspectives on a lot of different things of today, especially with representation and with immigrant stories, and there you go. So, I think this is worthwhile. It's a small investment. It's 50 minutes. So, if you have Criterion channel, go check this out. Especially all of my fellow Italianamerican in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York area. I think it'll speak to you. But those are my thoughts on Italianamerican. So that wraps up our feature of the week. And now shifting gears into my quick recommendation that I have for all of you out there. This is definitely going to be my shortest episode of the show because like I had a 50-minute documentary to talk about. So there you go. And I haven't gotten to watch a whole lot of things since I recorded my last episode. So probably my recommendation is The Guilty. I'm a huge fan of the original Danish film, which somewhere down there on my shelf. And this is a new Netflix film. It's a thriller. Jake Gyllenhaal, top-notch, amazing actor, really commits to this, is a demoted police officer. He's done something very bad. And now he has to answer the phones. And he gets caught up in this conspiracy, like this crazy situation with a kidnapped woman. And it just keeps unraveling. Like, obviously I've seen the original, so I knew what was happening. But it's still interesting seeing what Anton Fuqua does as director of this film. It's still intense, really well acted. And, you know, it's an hour and 30 minutes. It's an intense watch. So, mind you, there's some dark, dark things in it. But, you know, it's 90 minutes, it's on Netflix, so maybe give it a try. Especially if you're a fan of thrillers. And Jake Gyllenhaal, because you get a lot of them. Like, a lot of them. But that wraps up this episode this week. Short, sweet, to the point. Maybe I rambled a little bit, you know, but that's me. And hopefully you all keep checking out my journey through Scorsese all the way up until June when my brother and I talk about The Irishman. But we're getting up to that point, and we're moving along, and hope you keep tuning in. And there's months and months and months, and we haven't even scratched the surface of the biggest films. And in 2 weeks got Taxi Driver, which I'm excited about because that's my #1 Scorsese film. So there you go. But most importantly, thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.